So it's camper season once again, and one of the things I get to do every spring is to calibrate my portable propane pressure gauge. How this is done, it's propane measures in inches of water column, so we've made ourselves a water column. Essentially it's just a U-shaped piece of hose that's filled with water. I've got a little bit of dye in there, so but it's not very dark. And I'll line it up at 0. This one is not exactly at 0 because plugging on the second gauge changes the pressure in the tube enough to offset it that little bit from 0. So we run both of them to a shop-made manifold here that we run through the big hose down to our regulator and propane tank. So what we get to do now is turn on our propane and check our water column against our gauge. See if I can get close enough to get a focus on this. The scale, I've made my own scale in the center and it's marked off in inches. And right now our water is sitting at 6.5 inches, which if you double it is 13 inches of water column. So we look down at our portable gauge and we check to see its calibration, and we're dead on 13, so the gauge doesn't require any adjustment this spring. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Just one of the little things I get to do every year here. So the flavor of the day is race car axles. We had 3 more show up to get rebored for larger studs. So I started noticing a little discrepancy in this one as I was rotating in the mill. So I decided to come over here and stick it on the lathe and give it a small spin because it seemed like it was bent. So let's get this in. So we stick it in the lathe and give it a little spin, and yeah, I think we have a small bend on the go here. So this guy, I don't think he'll be racing anytime soon. So here's today's project, restaurant style deep fryer. We get to do a cleanup and tune up on this thing because, as you can see, we have a fair amount of soot on the go in there. The thing hasn't been maintained for quite some time, I guess, and so we got the burners pulled out. We're going to go take a look at them and see what the problem is. So I got these burners out here sitting on the bench, and it's probably time to give it a little eye opener for propane gas. I mean, the way these things work is you have a nozzle here that's roughly 1 millimeter, and it injects propane through this grease into this area here, and it depends on a Venturi effect to pull this propane gas up through to your burner area where it gets burnt. So if this area of the burner gets blocked, this propane gas doesn't care where it's coming out, and it's going to spill out here until you get an explosion. And I mean, so regular cleaning and maintenance on these things is fairly important. This one is not the worst of the 3, but on these burners, you have your main burner holes in the front. Now on the side there are some smaller holes that are meant to engage your pilot flame and light the main burner. So if these guys get plugged off, essentially you have a lot of propane gas coming out the front and it's not getting lit right away, so it will build up and then light with a small explosion rather than a smooth lighting and burning. So we're going to clean these guys out. We have a couple of drill bits picked out that are appropriate sizes, so we don't remove any metal, but we do clean out the rust, and we'll get to work cleaning these up. So I'm pretty much done with this burner, and I'm thinking, you know something, some guy's going to make a comment now about running drill bits down through burners and get the impression that I'm going to run it through that orifice. Well, that's not the case. Orifices are never cleaned with anything to poke through them. You always clean them in a solvent. And As you can see, I've got my orifice sitting in a tub of solvent to get all the grease and crud off of it, and it'll be wiped and put back in service. Kind of makes you wonder how many restaurants have burned from French fry grease catching fire on these things. Look at that, there's actually a name and number on these things. You would never have known it 10 minutes ago. So there's our clean unit. Remove all the soot so we'll know what's going to happen with it later for sure. Bit of never sees on our bolts because they were very, very hard to get out. And we'll reinstall everything and do a test run on it. So not a whole lot of shop video this week. Been much too busy with the RV, to tell you the truth, to get much video. Although I went to a buddy of mine the other day to have a look at his camper. He's having some issues with it, and so I swung by to give him a hand with it. And he asked me, you know, I had a few he told me he had a few welding rods that he wondered if I had a use for them. So I said, well, sure, I'll have a look. So he went into his shed and he brought out this pack of 4043. Looks to be brand new unopened, and these are 3/32, I guess, or 16th. So then he comes out with a box of 1/8 4043. 3/32. These might have a couple missing, I guess. Flux coated bronze. I think this is pretty much a full container. .332 steel TIG rods. And 1/8 inch steel. And he says, do you have any use for those? And I said, well, I guess throw them in the truck. So he did. The trouble is I don't have a TIG welder, so now I got to go and get a TIG welder, I guess, and try to have some fun with these. So that was a most gracious donation to the shop, and I thank him very much for those. And I guess getting a bit of help with his camper won't be an issue. This was yet another donation to the shop from the same gentleman that supplied the welding rods. I mean, he had this kicking around in his shed and had no plans to ever use it. So he brought it up to the shop, and I added a torch to it, and it'll come in handy for sure later. And so it's Sunday, and my machinist mentor needed a bit of excavating work done at his house in preparation to put a new deck, and so I loaded the tractor and went over. We got at it today, and when we were finished, he asked me how much I wanted, and I'm thinking, you know, I don't want anything. I mean, just the information alone I've learned from the man has been more than the cost of doing a bit of groundwork for him. So he says, well, come in the basement. And so I follow him in, and he says, how about you take this vise, he said, for payment on the groundwork. And I guess I had to agree. I couldn't turn it down. It's a 6-inch Morgan, and complete with record soft jaws, and should make a great addition to the new welding table when I get it set up. I don't know, this spindly little handle, I might break that off, but we'll see. Got a few minutes today, so I started cleaning up this vise, and got it all pretty good. Jaws, I got them deburred and tightened down with an impact driver to make sure they don't come loose. We re-shimmed the the nut in the back with a couple of pieces of stainless on each side because it did have a bit of play in it. I get to noticing this vise, I mean, it seems like it's awful long for a 6-inch vise. With this thing still fully engaged in the sliders, we can get 10.5 inches in there. Is that abnormal, or is this kind of par for a vise this size? I haven't seen one this long before. So it's been a great week for shop donations, it looks like. Not so much for projects getting done. Just been way too busy with RVs, working pretty much all weekend too. When the season winds down a bit, it should make for some more project time, and we'll get back at the power draw bar and get some things done with it. I'm still sourcing a bit of material yet for the power draw bar anyway, so, and it's not a big rush right now. So I'd like to thank the boys, Sheldon for the welding rods and Gus for the vise. They will come in very, very handy in the shop in future, and no doubt you'll see it being used on a few videos for sure.